I'm going to kind of riff and wander on this one because actually a lot of people need to hear this. A lot of entrepreneurs will be going through this. So you started by saying, you're starting to build your personal brand on Instagram and, helping others build their personal brands. But you realized that there's an upper cap to what this business can generate. So being a personal brand consultant, you're like, maybe I can do $1 million, maybe $2 million a year, but it's probably not a $10 million business, right? So the very first thing I would say is, that is an assumption you are making, but is it true? Right? And that's the question that we always need to question our assumptions. And we do that by saying, is this true? And I would challenge and say it's not true. The idea that you could build a personal branding empire that's doing 10 million, 50 million, $100 million a year is totally totally doable. The reason I know this is because you can look at Rory Vaden with God, I can't remember what the name of their group is. Story Vaden, Rory Vaden, brand builders. I'm sure that they're doing probably over 10 million a year. You could look at Story Brand with Donald Miller. He's doing well over $10 million a year. So the idea that you can only scale this to 1 to 2 million a year is an assumption you're making. That's not necessarily true. It's an assumption you're making because the people you're looking at and you're taking in insights from, that's where they're at. Yes. You would need to shift at some point, right? You can't just you could probably build a $10 million a year service agency helping people build brands. It's going to be very difficult, very logistically heavy, but it could be done. You need to transition, and what Rory and what Donald have done is they leveraged other parts of their media empire. So they wrote books, they're keynote speakers, and they're using that to bring in higher and higher value people, right? So, brand builders, they work with Ed Milet on his brand. How much do you think they charge him? Right? So it's different levels. That guy's making hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars a year. And so there's different levels and you can charge them more. So the person you could service right now that would help you get to $1 to $2 million a year, it would change. You wouldn't be helping them anymore. You'd be helping somebody else. More likely, you would then start to transition to helping the people that have the most money to be helped, which are businesses, like big media people. Yeah. Right. And that's where the big opportunities would be. So that's number one, is question the assumption that you've already made about the upside of this business. Assumption number two is, what's wrong with a business that's doing $1 to $2 million a year with good margins? You're talking about, okay, maybe I build this brand and then also start building a merchandise brand, a consumer's packaged good, right? It's clothing. And I'll leverage my notoriety to drive awareness towards the brand, and I'll make money that way. Okay. So the first thing is, you need to have money to be able to start that other business, right? And so having a high cash flowing business that's doing $1 to $2 million a year with high margins that you can then leverage into bigger opportunities, that's a great play. But you need to be very careful that you don't fall into the same trap that every other influencer falls into, which is pretty much the trap you've just described. They all do this. You look at the people that have 1 million subscribers on Instagram, next thing you know, they're like, I have a clothing brand, I have a whey protein brand, I have this other brand, right? And what they're doing is they've created this other brand. They're trying to monetize the eyeballs by putting people over to this thing, right? And it makes sense because the idea is, hey, if I have 1 million person, Instagram, then Gymshark is going to come to me and they're going to ask me, if I'm a fitness influencer, let's say, they're going to say, hey, will you wear these clothes and we'll give you some, money in exchange for that, right? They're obviously getting a positive ROI. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing that marketing with you. And so a lot of, creators, they'll then jump to instead of hawking somebody else's gear, why don't I just create my own version of that gear and hawk that? Sounds great in theory, but if you're a creator who doesn't have any experience with packaged materials and that type of a business, you're going to have to learn a lot of stuff. Yes. And so then it's like, oh, what is your actual margin? Is this actually any better than what those guys are making? Would you actually just be better doing an affiliate deal and just making the money that way? Again, is it going to be a $10 million brand? Probably not. So you have to weigh the pros and cons here. And I would say the reason I would lean away from doing a clothing brand in particular is one, you don't know anything about that demographic. You don't know anything about that business model, right? So it's completely outside your wheelhouse. You have to go learn something completely new. At the same time, you couldn't leverage the knowledge you already have that can make you money. You're going and having to learn this other thing, and this thing could also sink the other thing because it's taking up so much of your time. The other thing is it's a very saturated model, right? There's so many influencers that do the same thing that go and build that brand, right? And then it doesn't work, and then they shut it down. And the main reason for that is because people who are coming to you to learn about personal branding, which is the moneymaker skill that you have, they don't care what clothes you're wearing. Right? It's a conflict. It doesn't make sense. They're like, I'm not coming here to see what shirt you have on. Like, I'm coming here to learn about personal branding. And so you have to figure out, okay, what am I actually trying to accomplish here? Like, is it to make money initially and then build that brand over here? But that brand should always be able to stand on its own two legs, right? It shouldn't be dependent on you as the personal brand pushing its media. Like, if you're the only distribution channel, that thing is going to fail for sure. And you just see a lot of influencers fall into this. The other side of that is, if you're going to do that, you'd probably be better off partnering with an operator who knows that industry really well already. They can come in, they can shortcut your learning curve. They do all the operations, you handle the distribution. And that's been a model that a lot of influencers have been playing with over the last couple of years. The problem when influencers become operators is they realize very quickly, oh, I was good at creating content, not necessarily at operating a business. So that fails. Then if they partner with an operator and they're doing the distribution, both are vulnerable to the other person in an interesting way. Like, one is the operator who thinks that they're bringing all the value to the equation because they're doing all the unsexy hard work. The creator thinks that they're bringing more value than they are because they're bringing all the eyeballs, right? And so there's like this, it can be very hard to make those relationships work. Now, the ultimate is if you can find a world where you're good at selecting CEO type talent, co-founders that have the operational skills to build the business around your distribution machine. But your distribution machine right now, you're trying to build it off the back of personal brand awareness. And so what would that distribution machine be? It wouldn't be clothing, right? It'd be something else that's more in line with what that audience is coming to you for. So that's what I would try and figure out, is like, where is that opportunity? And honestly, I wouldn't even worry about the $10 million opportunity right now. Like, so many people, they get ahead of their skis thinking like, oh, this business isn't scalable. It only has a total addressable market of like 10 million. And so like, I want to build $100 million thing. It's like, cool. Build the $2 million thing first, make money, and then go build the $10 million thing, make money, then go do the next thing. It's like there's a bit of a stair step here. And, most opportunities are not actually limited by their market size. Like, it's just a false narrative that you make in your mind where you say like, oh, I can't grow this beyond $2 million a year, personal branding. You 100% could. You just need to figure out a different paradigm to attack it from. Right? Because you're looking at it from like, well, I can only personally service so many people. And even if I have a team, 5 people, how many people could I actually take on at a time? It's like, well, could you build a 100-person agency? Like, really, could you? Like, what's fundamentally different about building a 5-person team to service 10 customers that are all paying $100,000 a year? Right? That's what, 10,000 a month, right? What's the difference between that and having a team of 100 people all servicing that same ratio, right? And it's like, oh, you could go from $1 million a year to $100 million a year just by scaling the team. The market's there. You're not going to saturate the market with your $1 to $2 million personal branding agency, right? So it's a paradigm that you're locked into that you have to think about differently.